I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Five Nights at Freddy's fanverse, and I'm sure you know of the questionable character that took part in it, but that's not what this video will be talking about. Maybe I'll cover that hot mess another day. Today, I want to tell you all about a creator from the Fanverse initiative that was forced to remove all of his FNAF related projects, why, and most importantly, my favorite game that he made, which is now banned. To start, I want to clarify, because some of you may be wondering, how are you talking about this game and how do you have gameplay of you playing it on your second channel dxtrwhite, which everyone watching should definitely subscribe to, if the game has been banned? Well, that's because people are awesome and have not only archived the game in question that I'll be talking about today, but all games that this creator was forced to remove. The game we'll be talking about today is the banned FNAF game, but also, hands down, one of the scariest FNAF fan games I've ever played, A Shadow Over Freddy's. Before we begin, I'd like to say that I don't make FNAF videos, I make horror game videos. I've just recently been finding so many FNAF games that I've been wanting to talk about. And I will be moving the question of the video winner to the end of the video to hopefully not interrupt and ruin people's experience of the video. Hope you understand, and let's go. A Shadow Over Freddy's begins with some dialogue explaining that we wake up in a dark room and that all we can hear is the low buzz of a metal fan. If you couldn't guess, this room in question is the office from Five Nights at Freddy's 1. Before saying, quote, "Leave immediately before the shadows that have devoured this abandoned building come to consume you as well." We're shown that we have 5 nights remaining, and now we're thrown into the main gameplay loop. A Shadow Over Freddy's is a semi-free roam game where you walk around the Pizzeria from FNAF 1. Each night has a different task for you to complete, and as the nights go on, more and more threats are added for you to keep track of. Night 1's objective is simple: find the exit. This game is incredibly accurate to the building we see in Five Nights at Freddy's 1, minus 2 specific things. There's a break room for employees which is located right next to the back room, and an arcade area that's right next to the kitchen door. I guess you could make the argument that there were arcades in FNAF 1, since you really never got a good angle of that part of the pizzeria, but fuck you. I've never seen anyone else do it, so I'm gonna say it's not accurate to the original. Other than that, if you know the FNAF 1 location, you'll be able to move around the area quite easily. A moment ago I said that this game was semi-free roam. I say this because while yes, it is free roam, it's not free roam in the way that other free roam games are. You're still moving from screen to screen like you do in Sister Location, but there's no set path you're forced to take and you can go wherever you'd like. You're equipped with a flashlight and you'll very soon notice that the pizzeria is dark. Like, really fucking dark. Like the night. Like black. Like charcoal black. Batman black, some would even say. So, seeing isn't super easy. To move around, you just have to point your mouse at the area you want to go and click to advance to that area. Pretty simple. Where does the threat come in? There are 2 threats prevalent in Night 1, the clock and Freddy. The clock is pretty simple. Rather than having to survive until 6 AM like in most FNAF games, you only have until 6 AM to complete the task you have to complete. If it reaches 6 AM and you still haven't completed your task, the game is over. As each night goes on, the clock moves faster and faster. The other threat this night introduces is Freddy. Freddy has a chance to appear in any room that you are in. When you see him in your room, you have to point your flashlight at him until he goes away. And this is when you'll notice that the animatronics in this game aren't really animatronics. Instead, they're shadows. Get it? Like A Shadow Over Freddy's? Like the name of the fucking game? Laugh. You better fucking laugh! Here's something I found interesting about Freddy, and 2 of the other animatronics in this game. Unlike most FNAF games where your reaction time needs to be on point, there's really no need for that in A Shadow Over Freddy's. The animatronics don't care if you're standing right next to them for 10 years. Instead, if you move to another area of the map while Freddy was previously in the same spot you were, that's when he'll attack you. So now you start to understand why the clock will eventually become a huge problem. Because every time you enter a new area, which I promise you is very often, you'll have to do a full 360 moving your light up and down to make sure Freddy isn't in the room with you. And with how slowly you turn, I promise, the experience will not be very enjoyable. Another thing to note about Freddy, he's very quiet. Typically when I talk about FNAF games, I almost always mention the sound cues the characters have. But not Freddy. Freddy has no sound cue letting you know that he's in the same area as you, at least not from what I could tell. So you'll really have to give yourself terrible motion sickness as you crank 90s in every fucking square inch of the pizzeria. Now, the objective. Each night has a different one, and night 1's is just to find the exit of the establishment. If you know the FNAF 1 layout, you should know where to go. Go out of the hall, walk into the party room, walk to the opposite wall of where you entered, and go to the right corner of the room by the bathrooms, and there you'll find the exit door. Walk through, and notice that the exit has been boarded up. Shit. As you attempt to turn around to find a new exit, this happens. That right there, if you can't tell, is the marionette. Oh, lanky fuck. When you see the marionette in a shadow over Freddy's, this is how you know you've successfully completed the objective of the night and will be moving on to the next one. But not before the puppet offers to tell you a story to clear your mind. I'm not going to explain the story to you, I think it'd be much better if you just experienced it for yourself. There once was a little kid who liked to play with his toys by his lonesome. He lived with his family in a small peaceful house outside of town surrounded by forestry. The home's backyard was his personal stage, where he played with his figurines of various shapes and sizes, making plays which were acted out for his enjoyment alone. Although he was alone, he was content in living out his youth playing with the plastic friends his parents had gifted him with. They were a small mannequin, a stuffed teddy bear, a porcelain dress-up doll, and a toy robot. But one day, the family's pet dog stole one of his toys during his playtime. Into the woods, he excitedly ran away with the toy robot, prompting the kid to chase after him to reclaim his friend. Annoyed by the dog's playful attitude, the kid caught up. Grabbing the toy from the thief's mouth, he began to pull. Oh, to be young and carefree. A kid and his dog playing tug-of-war in the back garden of their house with no one to interrupt them. Seems like a wonderful memory, doesn't it? The dog, excited to receive the attention it craved from the young master of the house, refused to lose this game they found themselves playing. The toy robot was almost free from the dog's mouth when... Relieved to have gotten his friend back, the kid wiped the pool of drool off the toy robot with the bottom of his shirt. He walked back home, leaving the animal twitching helplessly on the grass, with barely enough room left in its swollen neck to let out a pitiful, dry howl. The kid, arriving back out from the trees, positioned the toy robot back where it was on his makeshift stage and continued playing. Later that afternoon, the parents had found the body of the dog. They buried it where it stood. A brief overview. A young boy liked to create plays with his toys. One day, the family dog took a toy robot that the boy used and ran into the woods. The boy chased after the dog and began to fight for the toy back before eventually breaking the dog's neck to get his toy and leaving the dog writhing on the ground while the boy left it there to die. Already setting up a pretty fucked storyline. Goddamn. Can confirm my mind is not cleared, shithead. I do want you to keep that boy from the story in mind as it's very important for the rest of the game. After each night, the marionette will tell you a story, each story a continuation of the other, so you'll be hearing a lot more about this boy. Night's 2 objective is follow the music. On this night, you're introduced to a new mechanic, and a new threat is presented to you. Leaning is the new mechanic. Before moving to a new area of the pizzeria, you can hold right-click on an area to lean in and listen closely to the sounds of said area. Since it's so dark, seeing in front of you, even with a flashlight, is quite literally impossible. So leaning is what you'll have to use to make sure you don't bump into any threats. Which leads me to my next talking point. The threat introduced in Night 2. Bonnie. Bonnie works pretty interestingly. Bonnie will patrol the perimeter of the pizzeria, meaning that if you stay towards the center and never follow a wall, Bonnie will never be an issue for you. But then of course, you also have to bring up the fact that since you can't see very well at all, when you're in the center of the party room, every single area looks exactly the same, with only small differences in the party tables to let you know your position. It will become incredibly easy to get turned around and lose your position in the mental map you've been building. But how do you deal with Bonnie, you might be asking? Well, I don't know why you're asking. You're watching a video, not a live stream, so I can't answer questions live. You're just lucky enough that I happened to predict that you'd ask that, so let me explain it to you. Unlike Freddy, Bonnie has sound cues. Just like Freddy, there's a small chance that he'll spawn in the same area of the building that you are in which case you'll have to shine your flashlight at him to make him go away. If he's in the same area as you when you attempt to leave, same thing as Freddy, he'll kill you. I will say that him appearing in the same area as you is, from what I could tell, pretty low. Instead, you should be more afraid of walking directly into him. This is where leaning comes in handy. Before moving to a new area of the pizzeria, you'll need to lean into that area and listen for Bonnie's sound cue, which just sounds like he has asthma. If you hear Bonnie in one area of the pizzeria that you were going to move into, don't dipshit. Instead, maneuver your way around him. This, entwined with Freddy's checking and the clock progressively getting faster and faster as the nights go on, really start to add to the stress. You enter a new area, do your full 360 checking for Freddy. No Freddy? Awesome. Let's go west. Lean and listen for about 3 seconds. Fuck. Bonnie's there. That's the direction I wanted to go. Alright, let's go north instead. Alright, since I needed to head west, I'll try to go west again. Lean and listen. God damn it. Bonnie moved north as well. Now I have to move back down, and this can repeat multiple times, and time is not on your side. Now to talk about the objective of night 2, follow the music. It's really in place to teach you about leaning more than anything, as I failed to come up with any sort of lore implication as to why music would be playing, aside from the fact that you see the marionette at the end of each night. So when you lean into a new area, you'll most likely hear faint music playing. In most cases, there will be at least 3 areas you can always move to. You'll check each direction and listen for which way the music is the loudest. Whichever way is the loudest, that's which direction you'll go. The music leads you to 4 locations. First it leads you to the stage, then it leads you to the bathrooms, then Pirate's Cove, and finally the back room, wherein you see the marionette again, ending the night. Again, it's not a super difficult night, really just preparing you for what's to come. Before moving on to night 3, the marionette offers to tell us another story. This story I tell you is a true story I pray you never forget. There once was a boy who laid awake at night during a harsh downpour. Beneath the covers of his bed, he closed his eyes and tried to ignore the storm just outside his room. Enveloped in darkness, a sensation of creeping discomfort kept him from falling asleep. The roars of the storm were nothing compared to the restlessness that the shadows cast from the window gave him. He felt eyes watching him from afar. The boy opened his eyes and looked towards the window, but nothing was there. He tried to go back to sleep. He opened his eyes again, and out of the corner of his eye he spotted it. The hollow, white eyes of a living shadow. It appeared just as quickly as it went away, his uneasiness pushed aside by growing curiosity. The boy got up from his bed and approached the window. From out the glass he could see it, the silhouette of an animal, darker than the night around it and void of color even when light struck its frame, running off into the trees with a familiar object stuck in its mouth. His favorite toy, stolen again, being carried towards the forest. The boy couldn't help but follow along the shadow's path. The night air was freezing, brazen winds carrying countless droplets that hit the skin like marbles, their impact deafening any other sound other than the imposing thunder. Call it premonition, but he knew where the shadow had gone to. That place at the edge of the forest where he had last left the family dog. He was sure he would find it. Standing in front of the grave once more, the eyes from the shadow had gone away. In its stead, the twice-stolen toy now lay on top of the muddy mount, but this time it was moving. Its tiny plastic arms flailing violently from side to side, its head rotating in place. The movements were sudden but clear. Unprompted by any outside influence, a spark of life was trapped inside this tiny vessel. Fascinated by such a discovery, he picked up the toy from the ground and held it tightly with both hands to prevent it from escaping his grasp. Smiling from ear to ear, the boy headed back home. Sick. So the boy saw the shadow of his dog in the window of his bedroom holding his toy again. He went out to the grave where the dog was buried and found the toy again, only to notice that it was moving on its own. So the dog possessed the toy robot. Interesting. We'll keep that in the back of our minds. Now let's move on to night 3's objective, enter the kitchen. If it wasn't obvious, all you have to do in this night is find a way into the kitchen. But of course, as I bet you suspected, a new threat is introduced, and judging by the theme of the night, I'm betting you can guess who it is. Chica. Chica's mechanic is incredibly similar to Bonnie's. Rather than patrolling the perimeter of the building, Chica instead patrols the center. So no matter where you are in the building, you're always at a risk of bumping into an animatronic. The way you can tell if Chica is in front of you is the same as Bonnie. Just lean into the area and listen for Chica's sound cue, which you'll be able to tell is notably different from Bonnie's. There's only one other small difference between Bonnie and Chica. If you stay in one area for too long, Chica will just walk into the same area as you, and if you don't flash her before moving to another area, it's game over. Now, I have a theory. I think originally Chica was meant to be the exact same as Bonnie, except she patrols the middle of the map, but FNAF added the moving mechanic to prevent a soft lock that can easily happen. Let me tell you about it. So, I should say that Bonnie and Chica can go anywhere in the building. It's just much more common for them to patrol their previously stated areas. And because of this, if you're in one of two specific areas, those two being the stage and Pirate's Cove, you might notice something interesting. There's only two directions you can possibly move in, and there's a pretty common chance that both Bonnie and Chica will be in both of these areas that you can move to, and that you would literally be unable to move without dying, since the animatronics only move when you move. So, I believe that Chica's movement mechanic was added specifically so that if you were to get stuck in a situation like that, you could stand in place and wait for Chica to move into your area, flash her, and then move to the area that she was previously in. Doesn't sound too hard, and it isn't, but this brings up another mechanic in this game that I've failed to mention thus far. In A Shadow Over Freddy's, there's this super epic, radical, and cool mechanic where if you stay in one area for a prolonged period of time, the clock will actually begin to move faster the longer you stay in an area. So constantly moving is the best way to slow the clock down. But of course, as I just mentioned, there's a chance that Bonnie and Chica will body block you all seductive-like, licking their lips and shit, and make you wait upwards of 10 seconds for Chica to move to your area. And 10 seconds is enough to make the clock speed up dramatically. So here's the tip. Unless you absolutely have to, try to avoid going on stage and to Pirate's Cove. Now for the objective, entering the kitchen. You'll notice that if you just try to go to the kitchen and open the door that you can't. However, you may also notice that a key outline has appeared at the bottom of your screen. This is to let you know that there is an item you need to pick up, in this night obviously being a key. This key is located in the break room that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Once you make it there, you grab the key off a key rack and make your way back to the kitchen, where you can then unlock the door and go inside, where you'll find the marionette yet again, ending the night. But before we can move on to night 4, we have to listen to another story, so buckle up, grab some warm milk and a banky, and let's listen to this shit. There once was a young man who had grown hungry for knowledge. Growing into adolescence, he had isolated himself from his family, focusing instead on his passion for the unknown, the spiritual, the place of mystery he had come to know years ago. In a box under his bed, he hid his secret away from all others, his living plastic friend, still thrashing and writhing inside. Every night he observed his movements intently. The young man spent entire days away from home, reading and studying about spirits and vessels. His interest turned into obsession, and his need to understand grew. Alas, it was all for naught, as no book had the key to the answers he'd been seeking. All he found were vague rumors and legends with no instructions or explanations. Since he was a kid, the young man never saw his dad as anything more than an obstacle. He was a moody, aggressive old alcoholic who only talked to his son when he needed something to shout at. Having driven everyone that loved him away, the drunkard was worth less than nothing in the eyes of the boy. Thus, he was the perfect candidate. One day, when coming home, seeing the old man sprawled out onto the kitchen table with a bottle in hand, he decided to show dear old daddy a new way of life. Holding a small felt doll in his right hand, the teen made his way to the house's garage. After a few hours, the deed was done and the plan in action. The boy watched his oblivious father drive away in his car, unaware of the tampering that had been done to the vehicle. Sitting on his bed, the young man took his dear pet out of the box and began to press harshly on its square plastic head, As it trembled in pain, he waited on the outcome of his small experiment. Oh, the humanity. After a car accident, he recovered the doll that had been planted below the seat and returned to his home. Placing it on his desk, he watched it closely for that same spark that remained inside his robotic friend. But much to his frustration, no movement came from the doll. Nothing. The vessel he had prepared for his father was empty, devoid of even a single remnant of life. Furious by his failure, he ripped the felt doll apart and threw it aside. What a waste. From then on, he was free of the shackles of his drunken caretaker, but without the trophy he had planned to take from his monstrous act of sabotage, unflinching in his resolve and with no guilt in his empty heart, he contemplated what to do next. He killed his dad. Holy shit. How does a child know how to cut the brakes to a car? Beyond me. But let's move on to Night 4. Night 4 has the objective of find the pieces, and this is, in my opinion, the most difficult night in the whole game. But that might also be because it took me an embarrassingly long time to complete, and because of the addition of the final threat this game has to offer, Foxy. Foxy is a bitch. He's such a bitch. Let me tell you about this fuckhead. I personally never died to him, but that's because I was so paranoid about him, I made sure to keep him in complete check. Foxy, as I'm sure you could have guessed, is in Pirate's Cove. As the night goes on, you'll have to continuously go and check on him by pulling open his curtain and flashing your light at him. Thankfully, once he gets close to coming out, he plays a sound cue letting you know to get your silly ass over there and check on him. But holy shit, with how slow movement between areas is, having to check for Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica if you're on the other side of the map as Foxy as he plays his song, the spastic mad dash you have to make to the other side of the building is enough to send you into cardiac arrest, I swear to God. But for the objective, collecting the pieces. Scattered throughout the pizzeria are 5 pieces to a golden Freddy plushie. You have to move around the pizzeria and find them all, which can be pretty fucking hard. Even though they're pretty big, there were 2 I looked right at but didn't see. That's probably because the whole game is totally black and white, so making things out is obviously harder than it usually would be. You have to collect 2 legs, 2 arms, and a head. You might be wondering about the body. Don't worry, we'll get to that later. The limb locations are as follows: in the kitchen, on the stage, in the back room, and on the table next to Pirate's Cove. The head can be found in the exit area from Night 1. Thankfully, there's no specific order you have to grab them in. So, my first thought was to immediately go to the kitchen, then the exit room, then walk across the stage, and then hit the back room before quickly booking it back to Foxy to check on him and pick up the last limb, since I fully believe that is possible to do before Foxy gets out. But Foxy isn't the biggest issue in this night. No, the biggest issue in every night is Bonnie and Chica, those fuckers. Freddy, in all honesty, throughout my playthrough, barely showed up at all, which I appreciated. But Bonnie and Chica, oh my god, it's like they were fucking scheming between nights. They knew my path each time. Oh, he wants to go to the exit room? Well, let's go right in front of it and to the side of it so that he has to backtrack 2 rooms to be able to try and get to the exit from another angle. But once he backtracks a room, let's body block him so that he has to backtrack 2 more rooms. Fuck him, right? Oh no, now he spent too much time dealing with us fuckers that Foxy's about to bust all over his face. So now he's got to get to Foxy before continuing. You want to know what would be drop shit fucking hilarious? If we body blocked him every fucking room on the way there. Fucking rolling on the floor laughing ass animatronics. Fuck. So needless to say, I never got to put my perfect plan into action, and I spent most of the night going from one side of the building to the other. This is why this night is so hard. But once you've got all the pieces, we get to listen to another story. There once was a sick, twisted monster who stalked its victims from the shadows. Its heart far gone from its body, the putrid, parasitic individual lived for the hunt, to capture and corrupt the weak, all for the sake of satisfying its disgusting pleasures. Tonight was no different. Amidst the rain, this vile vampire of society spotted a young girl, left outside the entrance to a family restaurant. She looked in from a window as the other kids inside had fun and celebrated without her. The monster approached the girl from behind, its body trembling in anticipation to savor the perfect opportunity that had been laid out in front of it. Maybe, if some humanity was still lingering inside, if some shred of dignity had remained in its hollow heart, it would have felt pity for her. Maybe it could have sympathized with her situation. It stood still, inches away from her, its hands reaching out for her back, the sound of its breathing masked by the downpour surrounding them. The child felt a chill run down her spine. She saw its eyes looking at her in the reflection of the glass. She slowly turned around to face the figure towering over her. You rotten, ignorant, heartless creature. You left that innocent girl in that alley to die a cold, lonesome death. Your hands were tinted red with her blood, colorless in your empty eyes, and you felt nothing but satisfaction from taking her life. And for what? You don't remember? We all know that's not true. These meetings have been merely a formality. If it were up to me, I would have left you alone to be torn apart by your captors, limb by limb, just like you tore the life away from her that night, tossing her into the trash after capturing the fragments of her presence. But now it's time for you to feel her pain, to feel the pain that all your victims suffered. Rotten hell, William Afton, alongside the shadows of your past. That's right. If you hadn't put the pieces together already, we're playing as William Afton, and the story that's been being told is William's childhood, and what led him to becoming the man he became. I think that this reveal is fucking brilliant. I absolutely love it. I think this is something that Five Nights at Freddy's should have done. You never learn why William is the way he is. You're just meant to accept that he's a murderer, which is never the case with actual murderers. I'm aware he had a reason as to why he murdered the kids, but normal people don't murder, period. You can always go back in their past and pick up on small hints that something isn't right in their development, and in a lot of cases, harming animals is one of the earliest signs. Look at Jeffrey Dahmer, who mutilated animals in the woods to study their insides. Giving Afton this bit of story, while generally simple, provides so much more meaning behind the actions that he made in the main games, and I really hope the new FNAF game Into the Pit does something like this. I love it. But now, we get to move on to the final night of this game. No, there's no sixth night. This is it. Night 5, with the most simple objective of all. Run. This night is batshit insane. Not only is there way more static on screen, there's also finally some color, albeit only red. This night makes every animatronic the most aggressive it's ever been, aside from Foxy, who isn't active at all, but that's for good reason. Every location you move to sends you to a completely random area of the pizzeria. You'd think to run to the exit, but the moment you step out of your office, you're teleported to a totally random area. And maybe you eventually find the exit, but as you run through the doors, you realize you get teleported back onto the other side of the pizzeria. And if you thought the clock was moving quickly on previous nights, you're not ready for how quickly that shit goes down in night 5. In order to win, you have to randomly teleport through rooms for long enough that you eventually get teleported inside the bathroom, which only has one exit. Once you leave the bathroom through that one exit is when you finally get teleported back to the office and win. But holy fucking shit, I have stuff to complain about before we get that far. Let me start by completely disregarding Freddy. He might as well not even be in this game with how infrequently he appears. But holy shit, Bonnie and Chica make me want to stick my dick in a toaster, holy god. It does not matter how quick you are. I think I established the fastest possible strategy for optimally doing 360s and checking rooms that you can possibly have in this game. But it doesn't matter how fast you are. There's one enormous factor of luck that you can't overlook. Pirates Cove and the stage. Remember the Bonnie and Chica body blocking I mentioned earlier with these two areas? Yeah, those two areas are choke points of this night. And the worst part? There's nothing you can do about it because every location is randomized. There's no pattern to map out in your head because every time you teleport, the entrances and exits get randomized again. Generally speaking, you have 2 shitty teleports that you can go through, and that's considering you've run into rooms where the first area you lean into doesn't have Bonnie or Chica in it. If you've had to check 3 locations before transferring to one of the rooms you've been in, which I promise you happens very often, then you really only have 1 shitty teleport that you can fall into safely. Why? Because again, the longer you stay in one area, the faster the clock moves. If you end up getting teleported to the stage or Pirate's Cove, there's a non-zero chance that Chica will take her sweet fucking time entering your area, almost guaranteeing that if you get sent to a shit area, that 1 hour is almost 100% going to pass while waiting. That's just how fucking fast the clock is on this night. If you get sent to the stage twice, you might as well just reset the game because there's no chance you'll transfer through enough rooms after that before it hits 6 a.m. Oh my fuck, then I still have to talk about the music. As you transfer through areas, you'll begin to hear music playing softly, but as you transfer through more rooms, the music gets louder and louder, making it fucking impossible to hear Bonnie, and I mean Bonnie specifically. Chica tends to be pretty fucking loud so you can figure out where she is pretty quick, but Bonnie's sound cue is so quiet most of the time that every time you end up leaning, you'll have to wait a good 3 seconds to make sure you don't hear him, and I cannot stress enough how much time 3 seconds is on this night when the clock moves at fucking Mach 40. So by the time it's 5 a.m. you're almost done. The music is blaring in your ears so goddamn loud you think your eardrum might fucking rupture. Your leg is bouncing so fast and your heart is pounding so hard you can feel it throughout your whole torso. And you can hear it echoing throughout your skull, making it more and more difficult to focus on listening for Bonnie's sound cue. When finally you realize you've entered the bathroom as fast as you can, you whip around to the exit of the bathroom and you find yourself in the office. All has gone quiet. The red tint has gone away. It's calm. For once. For once, you stop shaking. You take a deep exhale that you've been holding in for the last minute, and your heart rate decreases. As you look around the room you're in, you'll realize the torso of the plushie you collected pieces to on night 4 laid on the desk in front of you. You don't know why you've been collecting the pieces. You just know that it's something that you've had to do. You grab the final piece, and then that's the ending of A Shadow Over Freddy's. I've said games were masterpieces before, but this one has to take the cake. The gameplay was never overwhelmingly difficult, and it was overall a simple concept, but this game shows you that the only thing that matters in game design is execution, and this game knocked that out of the park tenfold. This is by far my favorite FNAF fan game I've ever played up until this point. The moment I saw the Afton reveal, I just knew I had to make a video about it. I couldn't keep myself from telling someone, anyone about it, and I thank you greatly for making it this far. But I still have some more to talk about, so if you're interested, I urge you to stick around a little bit longer. You might notice on a first playthrough that upon beating Night 5, you're greeted to a screen of the plushie you built with text telling you that something is missing. And this is the part where I tell you that there's been smaller objectives I've failed to talk about thus far. The plushies of the other animatronics. Each night has a different plushie that you can find. Whichever character is introduced on a night, that's which plushie you'll have to find. Night 1 is obviously Freddy, as he's the only one who's active. You can find his plushie on the stage. On night 2, you can find Bonnie's plushie in the storage closet in the hall. Night 3, you can find Chica's plushie in the right hall. And on night 4, you can find Foxy's plushie in the break room. Once you've collected all of them, you'll unlock Custom Night. I personally didn't play it, but you can obviously set the main 4's AI value from 0 to 20, and you can also select up to 5 plushies you collected throughout the main game to go collect. I can only imagine that the night consists of you going to the areas you found the plushies before and collecting all of them again to finish the night while dealing with all the animatronics at the same time like in night 4. A super simple but nice addition to an already amazing game. I also mentioned that I thought night 4 was more difficult than night 5. Here's my reasoning for that. Mainly because of Foxy and the fact that you don't have to worry about where you're going. Removing Foxy from night 5 was obviously the right decision to make, because if you didn't, the night would literally be impossible because of how random it is. But you also have to take into account that in night 4 there are very specific areas you have to go to, and that makes Bonnie and Chica body blocking you matter way more than in night 5, as if they body block you in night 4, you have to actively maneuver your way around them to get to where you need to go. In night 5, it doesn't matter where you go, as long as you go. Generally, I think night 5 is a better night than night 4, just because of the run objective and how sporadic it feels, really setting the fact that you are panicked and you have nowhere to run. But night 5 is in no way more difficult than night 4, just more luck dependent. And the last thing I have to talk about, why was a game like this, a game that seems so perfect, forced to be taken down? Well, as mentioned, FizzNom was invited to be part of the Fanverse initiative by Scott Cawthon, and he accepted. He was the one who started work on the infamous Five Nights at Freddy's Plus. However, during the work on that game, he decided he wanted to spend time on himself and his mental health and stepped away from the Fanverse, leaving it entirely, which is why FNAF Plus was never released. And because of the contract that he signed, he was forced to remove all of his Five Nights at Freddy's fan games he's ever made, even games he made while not in the Fanverse, one of those games being A Shadow Over Freddy's. I have no idea the terms of the contract, and I can't see why they'd have him remove games he's made, but regardless, that's what happened and where we're at now. And if you want to know, FizzNom is still active just on YouTube with his channel, where he makes some pretty good videos, so I recommend you go check that out. I'll link him in the description. But thankfully, people have archived the amazing projects he has put together. But that was A Shadow Over Freddy's. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Before I go, in the last video I asked you all what your favorite memory from the Joy of Creation story mode was, and my favorite answer was this one by Joker of Spades. They chose the third night simply because it's funny that Bonnie punches the camera. Not a super detailed reason, but it was enough to make me laugh. The question of this video is, what's your favorite main series FNAF animatronic and why? With the question being asked, I've been Dexter, and I'll see you all in the next video. See ya!